My decisions are definitely lensed through the risks that I'm willing to take, making sure that she is not left without a mother. She's at an amazing age where she thinks her mom's cool. And I know that that won't last forever.
Well, then what are you gonna do with that? Yeah, cool.
The thing that has really touched me and I hope stays is that she's proud of me and she's 5. What I've tried to do with Devin is just involve her as much as I could in understanding why I have to go away. And every trip, before I go, I write her a letter of, if I don't come back, she has a letter. She needs to know that the choices that I made were because of her, not in spite of her. That she was one of the reasons that I wanted to make the world a better place. In 2006, I decided that I wanted to kind of get off my soapbox, stop ranting about the injustices I saw in the world, and start trying to be a part of the solution. Because I live in Breckenridge, I looked at the idea of literally connecting mountain community to mountain community, and that it was mountain to mountain, village to village, person to person, and that maybe we could find that common humanity through 2 mountain communities. General mission of Mountain to Mountain is to work with women and children in conflict zones. And the majority of our projects right now are in Afghanistan. I realize, the risks that I took financially in particular were the biggest because, I basically leveraged every penny I had to start Mountain to Mountain. Money is a very simple solution versus the corruption in war zones and the logistics of projects and changing perceptions and rallying the masses behind a cause. That's way more complicated. And yet I've really had to consider, okay, well, what if I can't go forward? If that was the case, we still changed lives. We funded 2 schools. We have paid midwives, we've saved lives, we've created computer labs, we have gotten land for a future deaf school, we've started construction, all these things that we've done that are in process and changing lives, then that's worth the financial risk. When my sister was at college, I became pregnant with my daughter, and my sister was raped at the college campus. And I myself had been a victim of rape when I was 18. And I never acknowledged the role that it played. I really was so afraid that I would be perceived a victim and that would forever define me. And I realized that because I had refused to be a victim, I had kind of grown this tougher exterior than I would have had before then. And so that tough exterior allowed for me to become fearless. So Mountain to Mountain really, on a personal level that I never really shared, came out of the desire to make a change for women worldwide and to look at the areas where women didn't have rights, where women, maybe where women's rights were the most oppressed, and work in the areas where it is the most difficult to be a woman. In countries like Afghanistan, the women aren't allowed to advocate for themselves. I had spent time in the Middle East and knew that as a foreign woman, there's a different dynamic, that I potentially could come in as a woman and work with the men as an equal, and therefore be a proxy for the local women until local women would have a place themselves. I can go in as a foreign woman and sit with the men, eat, drink, talk, chew tobacco, they take me fishing. They treat me like a man. They treat me as an equal. And in the same households that I'm treated as an equal, their women are completely closed off in another section of the home. And if I was a man, I would never see them. I think the access I can get as a foreign woman, kind of embodying this third gender, really is what kind of makes me uniquely situated to do the work I do. I was really surprised when I went to Kandahar, which is a province where the Taliban are firmly in control, learning that somewhere between 50 and 80% of the women that are in jail in Afghanistan are there on morality crimes. And that means that women who are victims of rape are jailed. And women who are trying to escape an arranged marriage are thrown in jail, as are people who may have assisted her. And I remember thinking to myself, well, what on earth am I going to be able to do? This is a very difficult province to work in. It's very unsafe. I just felt very defeated. Like, how can you even go into something like the Kandahar prison and work with the women and give them any sense of hope that life will be different on the outside? And what I realized was when I walked into the prison, the women all were tugging at my sleeve to tell me their story. And I had thought, they could be very protective. Even with my male translator, they poured out their stories, one after the other. It would have gone all night if we'd been allowed to stay there. And I realized for the very first time in Afghanistan that part of my role is to, one, listen and just to hear them, but then to essentially give them voice, for them to know that beyond the confines of their prison, that someone has heard their story, that someone is telling their story, and really just that their story matters, that they matter. That's kind of the epitome of empowerment, that's the epitome of freedom, that these women, their situation is not going to change necessarily by the work that I do. And that's a hard pill to swallow. But their story has been heard, because that was almost as important as any tangible project that I could do for them. I'm inspired by people fighting for what's right. People that don't look at these massive problems that we have to tackle, the environment and poverty and human rights, and get overwhelmed and say, I can't do this. It's too overwhelming. It's a drop in the bucket. I'm inspired by those that say, well, I'm putting my drop in the bucket.
Sit in my lap. Sit in my lap. How's that?
And without the physical risk, I think I wouldn't get the why question so much. I think that as a mother and as a woman, I get the why question because it's a war zone, because it's half the world away, and because it seems like change just isn't possible in a country like Afghanistan. And the second question I always get is, aren't you scared? you're working in a war zone and there's suicide bombers and there's terrorism and there's this and there's that, and aren't you scared? And the thing that scares me the most is that I can't find the funding to make Mountain to Mountain go forward. The thing that scares me the most is that I can't rally the masses behind the cause. I can't see doing anything else. This is what I do. And I think the reason is not because it's my work, it's because it's who I am.